Thank you, Chef. All right, everybody, welcome to week 4. Hello, chefs. Thank you for joining me. So everybody, welcome to week 4. This week, we're going to be covering, it's the beginning of our breakfast cookery, I should say. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys really quickly the class page so you guys can take a look. So for week 4, we do have the beginning of breakfast cookery, sausages and eggs, and we're going to also do hollandaise. And you guys can take a look at week 5. We also have sort of like a continuation with the breakfast cookery. And on that week, we're going to continue with more eggs, omelets, and also we're moving with a little bit of baking already, which is pancakes. So this is the beginning of that. We're going to do 2 weeks, with different type of techniques. So this week, you guys have 2 types of egg cooking, right, or egg cookery. You guys are going to be working with eggs over easy, which is a fried egg, and also poached eggs. And of course, a little bit challenge there with the hollandaise is going to be, I would say it would be as challenging as the mayonnaise from week 1. Or it could be just slightly more challenging. We'll talk about that. And we're going to give you guys some tips on how to work with that. So before I start with week 4, I'll pass it to Chef Rich. So Chef Rich, would you like to share with us any consistency that you saw during week?
This week? Yeah, everything looked pretty good. I actually enjoyed looking at a lot of the projects, and it's funny, Chef Warren was talking about all these applications for just this technique, and I feel like I gave a lot of feedback about that because people were asking a lot about pickling different vegetables, and also people were doing them and turning them in for their assignment too. So I had some that were had a ton of different pickled vegetables all put together. And so it was pretty cool. All in all, it was great. But one thing I would just mention is I'm still getting a whole lot of assignments where people are setting up. They're showing me like all their ingredients that they bought from the store, like on the cutting board, like everything's there. But I'm trying to tell everybody like that's mise en place is, when you set up that photo, everything has to be prepped and weighed out, and it's got to be ready. And just trying to explain, especially like this week doing the pork sausage where it's like a temperature issue and making sure it's cold, just being able to really be able to get through that recipe technique with like that efficiency and make sure you haven't forgotten anything, just setting up, being organized. So that's what the mise en place is all about. So I can appreciate the pictures of all the ingredients, but it doesn't really constitute your mise en place. So just like for future reference, just something I continue to see pretty regularly. So just some food for thought.
Thank you, Chef. Yeah, and that's really important, guys. We're trying to train you guys to follow instructions properly. You guys are going to be working under a lot of chefs who are going to give you lots of instructions, and you have to follow them the way that they like you to do the work. So thank you so much, Chef. So this past week, we saw, submissions. We still would like you guys to try to submit on time. And by the way, you guys, on time means that you're going to be submitting the latest by Tuesday night, right? You're still on time right before, but obviously we don't want you guys to focus on Tuesday to be the day. Try to look at your schedule. It's really, really important that you guys take a look at all the responsibilities that you guys have with jobs, families, you name it, right? Take a look at the schedule, kind of map it out for yourself and think, okay, this is a good spot that I do have available for me to do a little bit something for school, whether it's organizing your production, whether it's shopping for the ingredients, right? Whether it's doing a quick little mise en place, taking pictures of that, saving it maybe for the next date so you can continue with the, with the work. I know when we hit the baking class, you guys will be able to do maybe your mise en place and then put it away and then continue the next day. And I'm talking about for those who have a really, really tight schedule. There's ways to really stretch your work out. And if you guys need help with that, please get in touch with us. We want to see a much higher submission by Tuesday night. The reason why is because we want you guys to get up to 100% of the points that are available to you. Once you guys submit late, automatically there's a 15% points that are taking off from you, So little by little, that's going to make a huge difference. So plan it out. The sooner that you guys can start working, the better. And this is for everybody in general. Um, I wanted to also mention something else. We do have, and I don't know if you guys were aware of this, but we do have a grading period policy in place for school. And our grading policy says that your assignment, the grading can take up to 72 hours to get back to you, on your grade to get back to you. So if you guys submit, let's say on a Wednesday, right, then know that it could take up to 3 days to get that grade back. The reason why, you guys, is because we do have a lot of students. You guys just have Chef Rich, who's doing the grading for this class, for 2 classes. And we want to make sure that, obviously he has that grading policy in place, just to give him time to catch up. As the assignments are coming in, he's grading. And so please be a little patient, if you guys want to know. If your assignment is taking longer than that, then definitely we want to hear, because if Chef Rich needs a little help, we can jump in and help him out as well. So, but please, reach out to us if you're having issues with that. But just know that, we do have that policy up to 72 hours. It could take less than that, okay? So it doesn't have to be all the way to 72 hours, but it can go all the way that far. And also the other thing is, we also need 2 days to spend with our families, right? We also have days off. So I want everybody to be aware that, we do spend a lot of time with our families too, and we can't always be 100% with our work. Okay. So this week we're going to start working with, we'll start talking about a little bit about the structure of the egg. That will be the first thing I wanna kind of focus a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and share with you guys sort of like the anatomy of the egg, right? It's really important to understand the structure of the egg, each little part of the egg, because each part it plays a role, whether it's how it affects the temperature, how time and maybe, humidity or lack of humidity, how it affects the egg in general, temperature, right? And so here's a quick little structure of the egg. I'm going to start first with the shell. One of the things that is quite important about the shell is that the shell is very porous. There's like a couple of little holes in there. We don't see them to the naked eye, but it is porous. So that means it has the ability to absorb odors, right? So for example, if you guys just finished cutting an onion and you just put the onion inside the refrigerator and you have your exposed eggs, right? They eventually, the eggs are going to start absorbing the odors from the onion. So it's porous. It will absorb the odors. And the other thing is the humidity that's inside the egg can also kind of go away. So we want to make sure that we keep the egg as protected as we can. You can, keep them obviously when we work in the industry, we tend to keep our eggs at the lowest section of the shells, because, if they do crack and they do kind of start dripping on everything else, we don't have a huge contamination. So we want to keep the eggs all the way at the bottom shelf when we work in the industry. And I know for our homes, right, you guys have like on your refrigerator, the little door that opens up and we keep the eggs in there. But at least they're sort of like protected. They're covered with a little window, and also protected from odors and protected from hopefully not spilling inside the refrigerator, so we don't have any contamination. And of course, a contamination could be salmonella, right, when we work with raw eggs. So it's important to keep that in mind. Now, we also have something called an air cell. And I'm going to go ahead and go back to the diagram. This little air cells, I'm sure you guys have seen that when you guys have made like a hard-boiled egg. There's always like a little indentation, like a little gap that it's left when you guys finish peeling up the whole egg. This is an air cell, and the air cell is actually very important when it comes to the grading of the eggs, and we're going to talk about that in a second. The bigger the air cell is, right, that means we have evaporated a lot of humidity from the air out. And so it's older, it's a much older egg. The smaller the air cell is, that means it's a much newer egg, it's a little bit more fresher, right? And so we want, that's one of the things that they take a look whenever they give a grading for the eggs, whether it's a double A or B level, grade. So this is important to keep in mind. The longer you guys keep the eggs outside, especially at room temperature, the more the air cell is going to become bigger, because a lot of the humidity kind of gets out from the pores that the shell has. Now, this little squiggly line that you guys see here connected to the egg yolk, this is called the chalaise, or the chalaise, and this is what connects the egg yolk and holds it in place. Right? We don't want the egg yolk to be like swimming all over the place because it can easily crack. And so this is actually part of the egg white. So in the egg white, we have a protein called albumin, and the egg white is 100% fat-free, right? There's no fat in it, but it becomes part of the egg white right there. So it kind of holds the egg yolk in place. Now with the yolk, you guys have fat and also a protein called lecithin, which plays a huge role when it comes to emulsification, right? So that's really important. The egg yolk actually tends to have a different color. You guys might see that, some people tell you, oh, go ahead and buy brown eggs are better for you guys. The yolks are brighter, the color's better. Not necessarily. The color of the shell tends to, it's determined by the breed of the chickens or the hens that are laying the eggs. The brightness of the yolk is determined by the type of diet that the hens are being given, So yeah, I mean, we do have different types of eggs out there. They actually have eggs that are with, omega-3, which is a really good thing. It's good for your brain. They're a little bit more expensive. And of course, the omega-3 is going to be fed into the chickens in their diet, And so just a couple of things. We do also have the membrane in the egg, and you guys do see that when you're peeling your eggs, when you guys do the hard-boiled eggs, right? We have the membrane. Everything, of course, the chalaise, everything it's edible except the the shell, of course. And so just a quick little background for you guys when it comes to the structure of the egg. Now, we do have different grades, like I mentioned earlier. And the grades that we have is AA, which is the best one. And I wanted to show you a quick little photograph that I have here. AA means that the egg yolk, when you guys crack the egg yolk, here it is, you see that the egg yolk, it's a little bit firm. It's actually standing up a little higher. The egg whites don't spread out as much. They kind of stay as close as possible with the, I'm sorry, I gotta look at this one. The egg yolk is a little bit more firm. You can see the egg white's a little bit closer to the yolk. It hasn't spread out, too much. So that means this is a much fresher egg, right? Usually they tend to be a AA. Something that is not as fresh, you're gonna notice that the egg yolk kind of spreads out just a little bit. The egg white tends to spread out even more, right? And so this is one of the ways that they kind of test it out in the industry when they're slapping, the stamp or the grading that they're going to be giving to the eggs. This is one way you guys can test it at home, just kind of putting it in a glass of water. Anything that it's a little bit not so fresh, it's going to float. And the reason why they float is because the air gap that is inside is actually bigger, right? So the bigger the gap, the more the egg is going to float. And then, of course, the smaller the gap, the air gap, the egg is going to sink because it's a little heavier. So you guys, this is one way of just kind of testing it at home. We do tend to buy a lot of, for our own consumptions, we tend to buy a lot of AAs and A's as well. And the letter B, usually they tend to kind of crack them and they sell them more like in egg pools, like the scrambled egg already that you guys can buy. Like in the industry, you guys can buy something that's already whipped, all together. So you can just kind of pour it and make scrambled eggs, right? So they tend to be sold in that form. Let's talk really quickly about, let me talk about the sizes. So there's different sizes when it comes to the, when it comes to the eggs. And I'm gonna go ahead and show you a quick little chart that I have. From the smallest of the size, we have like a peewee, right? That's really, really small. And you guys have here, per dozen, it gives you about 15 ounces if you guys crack a dozen of those little size, the really small ones. We have the small, medium, large, extra large, and jumbo. Now, just a little heads up, you guys. In the industry, we tend to use a lot of the large eggs. So when you guys take a look at a recipe, right, most of the recipes are actually made for the use of large eggs instead. It's really, really important that you guys know that information, because especially when we start moving to baking, sometimes recipes, and I don't think our recipes do that because we tend to go more by weight. But a lot of the recipes that you guys may follow in books, it may call for like one egg, right? And sometimes you're wondering, well, what size is that? Sometimes the recipe doesn't tell you large. As good recipes will be very, very specific when it comes to that. But I've seen some recipe that just says 1 egg, right? It doesn't tell you 1 egg. So it's really important that you understand that a lot of the eggs that we use, the size in books and even our books, it's large eggs. A large egg tends to be between 1.8 to about 2 ounces, by weight. So if you ever, for example, if the recipe calls for like 3 ounces of eggs, you've got to know that if you crack 2 of them, you can have up to 4 ounces, right? The most, up to 4 ounces. So just to give you an idea, if you have to crack a bunch of eggs, when you're following a specific measurement. So there's different sizes, right? Very commonly, we tend to find the large, the extra large, and the jumbo at the stores. One of the things that I do remember making mistakes, when I was like starting my baking practice, I remember buying like jumbo eggs, right? And I would make the product, and of course the stuff was a little runny, was not really good, so this information is really important to know that, a lot of the recipes do call for large eggs. Hi, Sarah, you have a question?
Yes, Chef, thank you. Just for my own morbid curiosity, when we're talking about recipes that do cook by weight, and it wants, it rarely is that going to fit into the exactly 1 egg, exactly 2 eggs kind of category. So what is sort of your rule of thumb? Do you scoop a little out? Do you just kind of get it as close as you can? Because I cook a lot by weight as well, but it's far more accurate.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's say, for example, there's a lot of recipes I might say, 3 ounces of egg, right? So you know that a large egg is going to give you roughly minimum like 1.7, 1.8 ounces. So you can crack 1, that's not enough. So you need an extra one to get you to about 3 ounces. But if you crack the second one, you know that you're going to go over 3 ounces. So what you do is, the best practice to do is you crack 1 egg, right? You can put it on the scale. The second egg, you want to whisk it and break it down really, 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 really well. So you got to break the egg white, you got to break the yolk really well. And then you can continue adding it to the first egg that you cracked.
And you're getting all of the parts that way.
Because
Perfect.
all the parts are mixed together. I think that's a great question. But all the parts are together. So
Perfect.
if you decide to do just a cracked egg and you're just trying to pour a little bit of, most of the first thing that's going to go in first is the egg whites. So now you have a difference in the consistency, and also
Exactly.
the protein that you have, right? So it's going to be a little different. So it's always best to crack the egg, whisk it really well, and finish weighing it until you get to the measurement that you need. And any leftover egg that you have, I know egg whites, you can freeze them. They actually hold really, really well frozen, and you can thaw them out slowly, within a day or so. Egg yolks actually don't freeze so well, but if you're going to be having like whipped egg, you can actually freeze. So that freezes better than yolk by itself. They actually dry out really weird, so I don't recommend to hold egg yolks frozen. You can just hold them maybe for a little bit in the refrigerator. Yeah, no problem. Hi, Travis.
Okay, I have a question. I ran into it a couple days at work. We was using eggs. I always told that when you crack an egg, that red spot that's in the egg, if it's in there, you gotta throw it away. It's something that I've always done. I ran into it like a half a dozen eggs today we had to throw away because of that red spot. Is that right, or is that okay to use?
Well, I've been told the same thing. I remember going to culinary school, and as soon as we cracked the egg, we would show it to the chef and say, hey, there's a little blood there, right? They would say, just throw it away. I don't tend to use them, As a matter of fact, there is a little something there. I'm going to take you back to my picture that I have here. And Chef Warren, I don't know if you have some ideas there with that, you know.
As far as the blood spot?
Yeah.
Yeah, traditionally they're just discarded because they can't affect the flavor profile and the appearance of the product. So we always refer to those as being fertilized eggs, and just say goodbye to them.
Exactly. Yeah, so let me show you. This is what that might be. If you guys take a look, when you guys start cracking eggs this week, because you're going to be making your assignment, go ahead and take a quick little peek at the top of the yolk. You guys are going to see this kind of tiny little dark spot in the center. It's called the germinal disc. If this is incubated, right, if the egg gets eventually to be incubated in the right temperature, as soon as it's laid out by the hen, it eventually can become a chick, right? But if they're actually taken out and put in refrigeration, obviously this will never become a little chicken, you know, but that's what that little spot is, you know. So there is a possibility that the beginning stages probably started happening there, you know, but so that's the reason why we said just get rid of it, you know, but for the main purpose is that it might kind of change the flavor a little bit, you know. And again, you know, imagine you are serving like a sunny side up egg and the customer sees that, they're going to say, forget it, send that back, you know. So I would say just to be safe, get rid of it. But that's a great question, Travis. Okay, so let's talk really briefly about now let's move on to the actual cooking part of what we're going to be doing this week. So this week you guys are doing poaching, and you guys are doing fried eggs, right? Now poaching, I'm going to start with that. I know you guys have poach in CU 101. Do you guys remember the poaching temperatures? What was the ranges? I know, it's information that it's engraving my brain, you know?
It's
165.
You guys are pretty close. It's 160 to 180. 160 to 180 degrees. So if you think about it, poaching temperatures are actually way lower than a simmer, right? Than a boil for sure. Boiling is 212, but it's much lower than a simmer. A simmer, you guys might see like bubbles popping a little bit, you know, gentle still, but they can still ruin the egg when you guys crack it in there. So poaching is a little bit lower. It's a little bit more gentle. The bubbles or the movement of the water is really soft, right? So we want to make sure that this week when you guys start poaching your eggs, you want to make sure that you have a thermometer close by, and I would stick it in there to make sure that you are within that range, 160 to 180 degrees. And so I would say, I just want to show you really quickly the different forms of cooking eggs. There's so many different ways of doing it. You know, and we're just focusing this week, obviously, on the eggs over easy and the poaching. But there's different ways of doing, right? Over easy just means that you cook the egg just until the egg white has firmed up. And as soon as, you know, it has firmed up, then you're going to be flipping it over, right? And you're going to just flip it and maybe let it sit for the most 30 seconds to a minute, and you're going to serve it right away. So the egg yolk is still very soft. That's your over easy. Over medium, obviously, when you flip the egg, it's going to cook just a little bit longer. So until it's beginning to kind of set your yolk, but there's still a little slight runniness, right? It's very small. The egg white is nice and set. So you don't have any like the loose little egg white kind of floating around. Then you have, of course, your over hard, and this is where your egg yolk is fully dry, right? It's fully cooked. You have your sunny side up as well, right? And this is just, again, a quick overview of different forms of cooking the egg. This one you never flip. You only cook the egg just until the egg whites are fully set, and then you serve it right away. So you see that it has a beautiful, bright orange egg yolk that it never got cooked, right, on the top. It's warm enough, you know, to serve for the customer. And of course, we're focusing this week on poached eggs, right? The lightly poached or the fully poached. We'll talk about usually poached eggs, you guys. It's usually cooked until the egg whites are fully firm, right? So you're going to be picking them up from the water, and you guys can actually touch it to make sure that the egg whites are firm. but the egg yolk is always runny, right? So that's a poached egg. It's always runny. That's the traditional poached egg. And so what we're going to do is you guys can use, I would say maybe like a medium-sized pot, add some water. Let's take a look at the recipe really quickly, just to make sure. There is a little bit of vinegar in the water. And the vinegar, and this is just distilled vinegar, the vinegar kind of helps to start to, it's acid, right, going against a little bit of a protein. So it kind of helps to keep the protein together, so it can start coagulating a little bit faster. There's a little bit of salt just for flavor, right? So when you guys take out your egg, there's a little bit of seasoning on the egg already. You guys are going to be poaching 2 of them. So you want to get your water to 160 to 180 degrees, add your salt, your vinegar, and I would say take the temperature, make sure that thermometer is there available. And the best way to do it is by cracking the egg separately. And I'm going to go ahead and show you that. Crack the egg separately into a small little dish. And when you guys are ready, you're going to be dropping it in. There's different techniques of doing this. And I know I was taught, and I'll double check with Chef Rich and Chef Warren, but when I went to culinary school, they always taught me to lightly move the water, very, very gentle in a circular motion, but very, very gentle. So it creates this kind of little tiny little well in the middle, as the water is moving, and then you pour it right in there. So the movement is going to keep the egg white from keeping it together so it doesn't spread out everywhere. Now, one thing that you need to know is there's 2 kinds of egg whites in your egg. There's the loose egg white and there's the firm egg white, right? The firm egg white will always stick very close to the yolk. So you guys don't have to worry about that. But the loose egg white is going to be like, floating around. Most likely it's going to detach from the egg. And that's okay, right? No problem. What you guys are going to do is, it's your choice if you guys want to try that little slightly turning it with a spoon, but it's a very gentle movement, you guys. And you can drop it right in the center, right? One of the things that I like to do is, as it begins to kind of coagulate the egg, I like to use a slotted spoon and just kind of lightly move the egg just a little bit to make sure that it's not sticking to the bottom of the pot. I've gotten a lot of complaints from students saying it got stuck on the bottom of the pot. Well, no problem. Just kind of slightly move it, so it allows the egg to coagulate and it won't stick anymore to the bottom of your pot. And then, of course, keep an eye on it. It might take between, I would say, 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes, cooking. What the most important thing is the visual for me. I start looking at the egg whites first, right? The firm egg white. When you see that it starts to go from translucent to opaque, right? White, then you guys can go with a little slotted spoon, kind of scoop it up, feel it. Does it feel a little firm, right? The egg yolk is still going to be very soft and very runny. But if the egg whites, feels a little bit firm, then you guys can go ahead and put it on a paper towel, like if you guys have a little paper towel folded, just kind of dab this spoon so you can drip the excess water, and then you guys can put it on a plate. So that should be quick. What do you think, Chef Warren? Do you like the little technique? Do you do the same thing or no?
Yeah, that's a cool technique, and I've done that myself a couple of times. I think one of the biggest mistakes though that people make when it comes to poaching eggs is adding too many eggs to the water at once. Because what you're going to do is you're going to lower the temperature of your water, and then your egg whites aren't going to coagulate, and then you do run into a lot of stickage. And so that heat will help you prevent from sticking because the egg whites are going to coagulate as they come down. And then we've also found over the years that the harder water, the more mineral deposits that you have in your water, the more acid you're going to need to add to your water to help that coagulation in the egg white. For example, if at home you have a lot of white buildup around your shower heads or your water faucets, that means that you have a lot of hard water. So you might find that your eggs aren't coming together quite as well. So you might want to consider adding just a touch more lemon juice. And then something we do quite a bit in the industry is to determine the temperature, the proper temperature, we look for the bubbles on the bottom of the pot, not on the top of the pot. So, and as well, the amount of water that you have when it comes to poaching eggs can be a game changer for you. You don't need a big pot with gallons of water in it. A saute pan with about 2 inches of water will work just fine for you. So keep it simple. But you've done, Chef Carl has given all the information right on the spot there. So that's great.
Thank you, Chef. Travis, you have a question?
Yes, actually, what he just said makes me wonder now, because I actually live out in the country, so I have well water. So what I'm going to have to do to make sure that this egg comes out right. So,
Well, I would say the first thing is just follow the recipe the way it is. 'Cause, we don't know how it's going to work out at the beginning, right? Just follow the recipe. And if you notice that it's taking too long, maybe to coagulate, maybe just add a little bit more vinegar. But I am not too sure about well water. I'm not sure if maybe it's a lot softer water or harder water. I think it might be a softer water. I'm not sure.
well, we have a bunch of white buildup and stuff all over our kitchen sinks and stuff too, so that's why I was wondering.
So then it's harder water then.
Yeah.
Well, again, just follow the recipe the way it is. And if you see that it's taking too long to coagulate, then add a little bit more vinegar, just a little more.
Do I have to use the vinegar or can I use lemon water? Because too much vinegar, it'll be overpower the egg.
The lemon is fine. So we need some sort of acidity in the water. So that would work fine.
Okay. Cool.
And Sarah, do you have another question, Sarah? Or it's just a little hand that's still.
No, ma'am, my apologies. I'll take that down.
Okay, no problem. So that is it, you guys, with the poaching. And again, going back to what Chef Warren was saying is try to minimize adding too many eggs. Obviously, this recipe calls for just 2 eggs, Do one at a time, especially if you haven't really done a lot of poaching eggs. Do one at a time and see how it turns out. If it doesn't turn out fine, you guys, it's just an egg, poach another one, right? Make sure you guys have enough for the week so you can practice and practice. But it's just an egg, it's just a poached egg. It's a simple thing. It's a simple thing, because the way I'm looking at it is it's just an egg, but it's a technique that can take a little time to master, right? And to feel very confident about. It's just practice, and get ready to eat lots of eggs this week, you guys. Okay, I will come back to the photo requirements in a little bit. Now let's talk about eggs over easy. Right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share the recipe with you guys. So this is a fried egg, and you guys are gonna be working with 2 eggs as well. It calls for clarified butter, which this week you guys are going to have clarified butter, so you can use that or vegetable oil. We are going to be clarifying butter for the hollandaise. So if you have it, great. If not, just use vegetable oil and a little salt and pepper, and that's it. We do need for eggs over easy, we actually need a non-stick pan or even a small little griddle. If you have that will work just fine. But I think a small little non-stick pan will work just great. Maybe about a 4-inch pan if you have that. If you have something a little bigger than that, and that's fine. We don't want you guys to go out of your way to buy a brand new equipment just for this assignment. So what I recommend, obviously, you guys have a great step-by-step on how to do it in your reading for this week. But I know for me, when I was learning to do the fried egg, I think the most thing that kind of would get me a little bit was that flipping of the pan, right? So this week, don't feel like, if you want to practice, I say go for it. If you want to just get comfortable with the flipping, that's important. But, if not, then just a regular, spatula, you guys can kind of flip the egg over that way. I don't want anybody to feel stressed out about it. But you do want to start with a little bit of fat. Make sure that it's not too greasy on the pan. You want to crack your egg. You can always crack it on a separate little container, because in case we find that little red spot, you can always get rid of it versus cleaning up your pan all the way, again. So you can crack the egg in a separate little container, and if it looks good, then go ahead and just slide it onto your heat. Now, one of the things that I've, at least when I do a fried egg, I think for me is the temperature. Having the right temperature on the pan, it's a key thing, right? So we may start with, maybe like, if it's too low, you're gonna notice that the egg doesn't start to set right away. If it's too high, obviously it's going to start kind of bubbling up the moment that you put it in. And it starts kind of like browning and giving you this kind of really rubbery texture at the end. So I would say, start with a medium heat. And again, you guys, it's just a matter of like practice, right? So the moment that you crack an egg and you feel that it's a little too hot, just lower the heat, finish the egg and try a new one just so you can practice again. But a little bit of fat is just right. And what I do is I always look for the egg white to be fully, not translucent, but opaque, that it's almost all white. And that's when I decide to kind of flip it. You guys can always kind of move it back and forth just to make sure that the egg is sliding back and forth. And if you want to give it a quick little flip, it's just, I'm just trying to show you the wrist. And you just kind of flip it over. If not, just use a spatula and just kind of flip it over, with the spatula. I would say cook it for another 30 to about a minute before you guys decide to take it onto the plate. We definitely want to see you guys I'm going to go into the photo requirements because there's specific things that you guys want to do this week. But, we want to make sure that the egg is nice and runny. So let's take a look at the Over Easy right here, right? Again, you guys have 4 different things that you're presenting this week. It's a lot. So if you guys have one self-ID, that's perfect, right? Make sure you guys have the date and the week that you're working. One sanitizing bucket is fine, right? But we definitely want to see the mise en place for your eggs Over Easy. If you want to have them crack already in a little container, that's fine. Or if you want to have them separated, that would be okay too. So it says 2 properly cooked Over Easy eggs plated, right? So we want to see the photographs, kind of something like this. We want to see it kind of like this right here, Over Easy. So you guys can put the 2 of them side by side on the plate. And then we want to, then you guys need to break you're going to break the eggs so we can take a look inside and how runny those egg yolks are. So pretty simple. I think it's just a matter of like controlling the temperature, controlling how long you cook the eggs. With the poached eggs, very similar as well. You want to make sure that you show us the correct temperature using a thermometer. So take a quick picture of your little thermometer there. The eggs poaching, it says in the liquid after 10 seconds. So just take a quick little picture. It's going to be a lot of steam, I'm sure. And then, of course, the eggs out of the water, intact, whole. And then you're going to be cracking the egg yolk so you can show us how runny the egg yolk is, right? Now, for the sausage, and I'll come back to the hollandaise in a second, but for the sausage, since you guys already did the mise en place last week, if you guys have those photographs, you can add them into the folder. If you already presented them last week, that's fine. I mean, I think the main ones that we're looking for here is 4 and 5. Those are the main photographs that we're looking for here. Making sure that you guys have cooked, the sausage until nice golden brown. You're going to be cutting 1 in half, right? So we can take a look at the doneness in the center, right? So any questions so far with any of the things that we covered so far? Danny, you have a question?
Yes. In my other classes, I had a problem setting my range because it's electric, setting it from medium or light or simmer. So on electric range, where do you think I should set it for that medium range or that poaching range?
Because it's you just turn it on and it gets really bright. Is that what it is?
Yes. I mean, you have different numbers that go from 1 to 10.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay. I would say maybe give it a try with like a 4 first and see, and take the temperature of your water, maybe with a 4 and see where you are on the temperature.
Yes.
Yes, keeping it lower, right? Just to see where you are. And then if not, then the temperature, the thermometer will help you, guide you, whether you got to go higher or lower.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hi, Travis.
Yeah, the sausage that we made last week, it was already in my picture because we had it for dinner the same day.
Well, but not a problem. You do have the picture still on your Google Drive, right?
Just a picture of the plated because I already had it in my presentation plate with the sausage, the eggs, the pancake, and the potato cake already on the plate.
I mean, that's fine. Go ahead and just kind of add that photograph into your week 4 folder.
But I also do got another pound of ground chuck up there, organic pork up there. So I'm just making more sausage.
Well, that's fine. But just go ahead and organize your week 4 folder so you can have at least, did you take a picture of the sausage cut in half?
No, I just plated it and took a picture of it.
And you didn't keep any sausages from last week?
No, I ate them. I'm feeding the family of 4.
Wow. Then you're going to be missing one photograph.
I was making more sausage. I got everything still.
Now double check with the flavor, right? Now
Yeah, there we go.
perfect. Yeah. Well, okay. So there you go. You found a solution for the problem. All right. Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Oh, Sandra, let me go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead, Sandra.
Thank you.
Oh, no.
No?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you. The sausages, do we cook from frozen state or do we thaw them or?
You can thaw them out a little bit. Yeah, you can thaw them out. It's best if you thaw them out so they can cook more evenly. Because if you put them straight into while they're frozen, you might notice that they have golden brown color on the outside, but they might be cold in the center. So it's best if you take them out maybe one day before, put them in the refrigerator so they can start thawing out slowly. Or if you want to do them right away, just take them out onto your kitchen table so they can start thawing out, and then you can cook them. Just make sure that they're completely thawed out.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thank you, Chef.
Yeah, no problem. All right, now let's move on to hollandaise, right? So we're gotta work a little bit with the hollandaise this week. And so hollandaise, you guys, is actually considered one of the mother sauces, and I'm sure you guys learned that in your CU 101 class. It is a mother sauce. It is very similar to mayonnaise because you guys are going to be working with emulsification all over again. So there's going to be a lot of whisking going on this week again. But it's a little bit, I would say, a little slightly more challenging than mayonnaise because hollandaise, you got to work with temperature as well, right? When you guys work with the mayonnaise, you guys had your bowl where you're whisking just on top of maybe a wet towel so it doesn't move everywhere around. This time your bowl is going to be sitting on top of a pot with a little steam on the bottom. So you guys are going to be developing or creating a water bath this week. And the water bath is simple. It's just a small medium, maybe like a medium or a small pot that you're going to be adding water maybe to the halfway point, and you guys are going to bring it to a full boil, right? Then take it off the heat, and you're going to just be working with the remaining steam that you have. I don't recommend for you guys to keep the flame going or the heat going because now the steam, the steam is really, really hot, you guys. But it continues to heat up that bowl so much that it's going to eventually cook your egg. So the idea is to develop emulsification while we're warming up this sauce. We're whisking it, emulsifying, and warming it up as well. This week, you also are going to be clarifying butter, right? You're going to be clarifying a little butter. And I know you guys did that in CU 101, right? And so I'm just going to walk you really, really quickly through the process of, the process of poaching, hollandaise, creating the butter. And so this is going to be very quickly forming the butter that we want. We want to remove the milk solids that are coming in, found in the butter. Make sure that it is unsweetened butter, right? We want to make sure that there's no salt in it. So the way that I like to work it is just kind of put the amount that you're going to be clarifying, put it in a small pot, start putting the heat very, very low. The entire butter is going to completely melt, and you're going to see that the foam is going to start rising to the top. And of course, you guys are going to start the skimming process of removing the foam little by little, right? This requires some patience, right? Little by little. There's a lot of the milk solids that kind of they drop to the bottom, and eventually the little tiny bubbles are pushing it to the top, and you guys are going to continue to skim it off. All this, of course, you guys can get rid of, and you're going to be left over with a nice, golden, just fat. We call this fat ghee, right? Ghee. And obviously, the reason why we clarified, and you guys remember that from CU 101, is to be able to get rid of the milk solids. This type of fat, you guys are able to bring it to a much higher heat, and now it has a much higher smoking point. But you might be thinking, well, I'm not really cooking. When you're making a hollandaise, you're not really heating it up that high, so you really don't need that, right? But you do. It actually gives you a better emulsification when you guys have just like the ghee by itself. It gives you a better emulsification when you guys are putting it together in a holiday form. If you guys have, butter has water, there's milk solids, all that can actually kind of get in the way of the emulsification. So it's better to always clarify it. So that's the first step you guys need to do. Make sure you guys have your butter clarified. I recommend to do a little extra butter than what you need, because if something happens to your emulsification, if it breaks, then you have extra butter that you guys can, make it for the second time around. The other thing is any clarified butter, it holds really, really well in the refrigerator. It holds really well frozen, so you guys can keep it for a much later use. So I recommend to clarify a little extra butter that you need. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the recipe really quickly, what we're doing this week. So you guys need roughly about, well, let's take a look at the yield first, right? It makes about a pint. How many ounces is a pint? Anybody wants to shout it out? Oh, I see. Who's that? I see Sandra talking. How much, Sandra? 16, yeah. Yes, you're right, Sandra. It is 16 ounces, right? So I would say that's a lot, Now, this is for the entire recipe for making a hollandaise. So at the end, you guys have a 16-ounce, a whole pint of hollandaise sauce. If you guys think that this is too much, you're not going to be consuming this entire amount, you can easily cut this recipe in half. That's fine. But I do suggest it calls for about 10 ounces of unsalted butter. I would say go ahead and clarify a whole pound, if you can. Again, any leftover butter, you guys can save it for a later use. Or, in case you want to do this twice, or if you have to do it twice because the sauce ended up breaking, right? You don't know what's going to happen. So it calls for 2 egg yolks, right? So if you're cutting it in half, just putting 1 tablespoon of water. You guys have lemon juice, and of course, a little bit of seasoning here, salt and cayenne pepper. This is towards the end. So one of the things that I like to do when it comes to hollandaise is, let's talk about the water bath really quickly, right? I like to bring my water to a full boil, but then I take it off the heat, completely away from the flame. And then I like to put a towel on top. And usually the towel, I like to put a little water into it so it becomes kind of like resistance from the bowl so it doesn't move around. So I place it right on top of the steam, right on top of the pot, and I put my bowl on top, right? There's still, some heat that begins to kind of warm up that bowl, whether it's glass, plastic, right, or whether it's stainless steel. I do like to start with adding the egg yolks. I'm going to go back to the recipe. I like to start with the egg yolks, the water, the lemon juice. I like to start with those 3 ingredients first, and I start whisking them really, really, really well. If you guys remember, that's the same technique that we sort of did for the beginning, right? What you're doing is, and if I can take you back to what emulsification is, the idea is to break down the protein of the egg white. The protein of the egg yolk, which is your lecithin. The idea is to break it down really, really, really well into small little particles. And that's what the whisking is going to do. Once you guys break it down into small little particles, then the clarified butter is going to come in. Make sure you guys that the clarified butter is just a little bit warm as well, right? We're talking about really just a little gentle warm in your butter. And I would suggest to use either, if you guys want to put it into a little squirt bottle, or if you guys want to use a ladle, or even a measuring cup, with a little spout, if you guys want to pour it in. So you guys can have one hand pouring the butter and the other one whisking. But remember, you guys, emulsification, right? You got to be adding the fat very, very slowly. Drop at a time at the beginning if you have to, by whisking. because the idea is to break down the fat into small little tiny particles, right? So eventually the emulsifier, which is the lecithin thing in your egg yolk, is going to trap the fat and the liquid together, right? And so it's the same thing you guys have experience doing the mayonnaise. Slowly start pouring the fat. When you guys start noticing a little bit of thickness already forming, that's your emulsification coming together, right? So you're gonna be adding it in. I always like to keep, track of how hot the bowl is getting. If it's getting too hot, obviously, you know that an egg is going to start coagulating. We're talking about egg yolks here. It can start coagulating roughly between 150, 160, range in temperature and higher than that, right? So if you feel like it's getting a little too hot, sometimes I take the bowl out of the pot and continue whisking away from the heat, and then I put it back when I need to. You have a lot of control of moving that bowl back and forth so it doesn't start to cook on you. And so once you guys have an emulsification going, obviously you can start pouring your fat a little bit faster. It's gonna become really bright yellow, right? If it's a little too thick, you guys can add a little tiny more water and it's gonna loosen up, but only if it's looking super thick. If it's not, leave it alone, right? Because we do want a pourable consistency is what we're looking for this week. Because usually we want to pour this over eggs, over roast asparagus, it goes really well with that, over fish as well, right? But it is one of those mother sauces that I think the storage is very important to understand how to hold it. We always want to keep this, the hollandaise, in the industry, we tend to put them in a water bath, which is like a cylinder, container, metal, right? We keep it in there and then we put it over another hotel pan with water that is hot so you can keep it warm. But unfortunately, we tend to keep this mother sauce over the temperature danger zone, So in the industry, we tend to make this sauce quite often. Maybe every 2 hours, we're making a fresh batch to make sure that we're not keeping the sauce too long, in the temperature danger zone. Chefs, what's your experience when it comes to hollandaise?
Ooh, a lot. Hollandaise is an extremely versatile sauce. You have to remember, on the class page, you're going to see some different variations of hollandaise. And a lot of people have a tendency to think that it's purely for eggs Benedict, whereas there are many different directions you can go, everything from Bernaise to Chiron to Maltese. There's even a recipe on the class page for pâté de foie gras whipped into the hollandaise sauce, which is fantastic. Chef Carla brought up a lot of really valid points. Please remember, it's really important to separate those eggs because the egg whites cook at about 180 degrees. Egg yolks start to cook anywhere 140, 150 degrees is when they begin to set. So it's really important that they are separated. Otherwise, your hollandaise sauce is not going to come out. The biggest key to success, though, is whisking vigorously and adding that oil extremely slowly. Because I think that's where a lot of people have a tendency to go wrong. They get impatient. They wait till Tuesday night at 11 o'clock to start, and they whisk vigorously, and next thing you know, it's separated. One of the things you're going to want to look for as you're adding the oil, you want it to see it start to thicken and get thicker, like Chef Carla was talking about. If it's getting looser and not thickening, then you have not created your emulsion. So that's something to really watch out for. And also make sure you keep a real close eye on the heat in your water bath. Anything above that 180 mark is going to force you to scramble your eggs, and that's not part of this week's assignment. So Chef Carla really did a great job covering all the information.
Thank you, Chef. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of show you, again, the photo requirements for the hollandaise. Make sure you guys really read every single number, the mise en place. We want to make sure that we also see the double boiler right there, right? Your little pot with water. Clarify butter during the process. So show us kind of something similar to what I show you. Show us a couple photographs that you did the clarifying of the butter. And it says yolks in water in a bowl, right? So you're ready to start adding the rest of the ingredients or whisking. And then we want to see, it says the proper cooking of the egg yolks, no scrambled egg particles. You're going to take it to something called a ribbon stage. And ribbon stage just means that you have whisked long enough, right? And this is before the fat comes in, that you whisk long enough that you have incorporated so much air pockets inside that the mixture becomes a little on the thick side, right? So that's the ribbon stage. So it's going to start looking a little pale in color, lighter in color, and a little thicker, of course. And then it's safe to start adding the fat. So very, very slowly start adding the 1/3 of the fat first, add a little bit, whisk it, right? And then, of course, take a picture when you guys have added roughly about 1/3 of it. Take a second picture when you guys have added 2/3 of the fat. And this is just eyeballing, right, you guys? And then, of course, the final sauce, demonstrating that consistency. And you guys can kind of just pour it onto the plate, maybe kind of drag it a little bit with a spoon so we can see the thickness of the sauce. And again, it should be a consistency that what we call nappe consistency, which is if you guys dip it inside with a spoon and you guys clean the back of the spoon, you're going to see that it holds the shape, right? It's not dripping. It coats the spoon really clean. So when you clean it, you see it still coating the sides that you didn't clean. That's called nappe consistency, that still coats. So show us that. Maybe you guys can dip a spoon so you guys can clean the back of it and show us take a picture right there. Any questions so far, you guys, for hollandaise? And of course, reach out to us it's definitely an assignment that you should start early. Of course, get the hardest thing out of the way, which is the hollandaise. Get that out of the way. Start doing your clarification of the butter. And if you have questions, right, you still are able to catch us before the weekend comes. We can work with you one-on-one on that. I saw Danny. Did you have a question, Danny? You good? Oh,
I was just wondering, do we have to use a double boiler?
well, yes.
Is that a specific tool?
The double boiler is just the pot that's going to provide heat, because you're going to bring the water that you're going to be adding into the pot. You're going to bring it to a boil. So that's what's heating up your mixture that you're creating, the hollandaise.
Okay, so this is not a separate tool, a double boiler.
No, it's just a regular pot that you have at home, like a medium-sized pot. Add a little water, bring it to a boil. That's what we call a double boiler, or a bain-marie. In French, they call it bain-marie. You guys might see those terminologies, in the future. Benjamin, you have a question?
Yeah, my question's not about this assignment.
Okay, Benjamin.
My question is, okay, I think it was Chef Warren, okay, when he said, when it was right at the beginning, when you guys were explaining how the class was going to work, how if we did our knowledge checks and all that, right, and how we kept coming to live sessions and all that. Well, I've been turning in my assignments on time, early, except for last night. Yes, it was turned in on time. But I'm not getting any of my financial aid money, and they're telling me that it's my attendance, and I don't get that.
Hey, Benjamin, why don't you reach out to me after class and we'll resolve it?
Okay. All right.
I'm good? Okay.
Thank you, Warren.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, do you mind taking the last question? I'm going to head out to the next class.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Great class. Great job.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. I'm going to try to pronounce the name Bathsheba. I don't want to. I don't want to make it sound bad.
Yeah, that's okay. You got it. That's fine.
Did I get it? All right.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. So with the clarified butter, I already did that, but I didn't have the pictures in stages. So should I do it all over again just to have the picture in every stage?
Yes, please. Yes, please. It's very important so that the reason we're asking for these pictures is to establish the fact that you understand the technique. And without the pictures, then we don't know that you understand the technique. So it's very important.
Okay, I have just a little bit of butter. So could I just use that, or I should go for the whole 10 ounces?
Yeah. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. No problem. No problem.
All right. Thank you.
Ladies and gents, do we have any other questions? Danny, what's up?
Are we using the mise en place pictures from last week for the sausage?
That is acceptable. You can do that. Chef Rich at the beginning of the class brought up a very important thing about mise en place. The mise en place pictures that you submit, meaning the entire class, that you submit should be mise en place that is ready to execute the assignment. So for example, if you need to use 4 ounces of ground pork to make the sausage, you should have a picture of only 4 ounces of ground pork. So everything should be portioned out, ready to go, nice, neat, and organized.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Ladies and gents, let's see, who else do we have in here? Travis.
This is my weak part as a chef, is the cooking of eggs and all that. I have never been able to do that well. But the question I have is actually for Rich. It's to do with my mise en place. I have sent pictures of it. Well, I was hoping I was doing it right, the way I did it. Because I actually had the sausage sitting in the bowl, and then the ingredients all in my little ramekins on it. I wondered if that was how I was supposed to do it, because I've been doing it the whole class that way.
Yeah, it's just everything. You just want to show everything measured out, and all the items that need to be prepped. Like, if you had to have onions and celery, you want to see all that diced up in the picture and measured out, along with all your spices and stuff. It just helps you make sure you're organized and not forgetting anything. So.
I've been doing it right then.
You're good. And as far as cooking eggs, everybody, it's best to remember one rule of thumb, and that's called low and slow. A lot of us try to get those eggs done quickly and make it happen real fast. Just take your time, set your temperature on your stovetop if you're using an electric stove, just to about medium low. Allow that pan to get warm, and then add your fat, and then add the egg. Hot pan, cold oil equals no stick. It's a general rule of thumb. Any other questions? All right, ladies and gents, we are looking for 100% on-time submission this week. Somebody explained this the other day. It's just like Thanksgiving Day. Do not wait until Thanksgiving Day to pull your turkey out. You pull it out a couple of days in advance so it has enough time to thaw. We need to start thinking about our recipes or our assignments in that same way. So if it's due Tuesday, it doesn't mean you start Tuesday. Start a couple of days early. I think both of these classes rock in general, and you guys are doing a fantastic job. I hope everybody has a great week. We look forward to seeing you soon. Bye, everybody.